Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my rankings and ratings video for the Booktube Prize SemiFinals round, which just ended at the end of July. So those results have been announced, and I will link the Booktube Prize webpage below so that you can go and see how everything played out through each of the rounds if you'd like to, if you haven't been following along all along. But I'm just going to go through the 6 books that I read. I was reading in nonfiction. I think I had group B, but I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was group B, but there were only 2 groups and I had one of them for nonfiction. So these are my rankings and reviews. I'm going to go from my least favorite to my number 1 pick. Obviously, the top 3 are the books that I voted to go through to the next round, and we'll talk about which books actually made it through when we get there. Okay, so in number 6 position was All the Frequent Troubles of Our Days by Rebecca Donner. I had this book in the previous round and put it in 6th place in that round as well, so I'm not going to talk about it too much here. This is history nonfiction, talking about one American woman's work to basically to run a resistance group in Germany during Hitler's rise to power prior to World War II. She was, she had gone over there to study at university and had gotten involved in the resistance movement. And it's all about that. It just didn't work for me. I didn't care for the way that the story was told. I had some problems with the lack of source material that was used to create the book. You can hear more about my thoughts on that book in my previous video, and I will link that down below. In 5th position was Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, which is a memoir. I had 2 memoirs in my group, this one and another one. This one made it into 5th place. And I mean, 5th place, it makes it sound like that I didn't like this book. I did. I really liked this book. I read it in one sitting. It made me cry, and I thought it was a really well-done memoir. It just didn't, against the other books in this particular group, it just wasn't my favorite of those other 4 books. The 6th book obviously being in 6th place. So what is it about? Crying in H Mart, very popular memoir. It's basically a mother-daughter relationship story. It's about growing up Korean American, and then Michelle grows up, obviously that whole, child of an immigrant story growing up in America and how difficult that was for her. Very troubled relationship with her mother. Her mother was very demanding and had high expectations of her, and she was not a very she didn't conform well to expectations. Then her mom, after she moves away, her mom is diagnosed with cancer, and it's about that journey of Michelle, like basically coming to terms with her feelings about her childhood and her mother, and trying to help her mother through her treatment for cancer. And then the last bit of the book is about her after her mom has passed away, and about her sort of career trajectory. She's a singer, some kind of a pop music type singer, and I don't think I didn't write down the name of her band, but that part of the book, that was one of my problems with the book, is such a short period of time is spent on that whole part of her life that it just felt rushed and sort of thrown in there at the end, and I didn't feel it really added to the story that was being told, because I think really the centrality of the story was this mother-daughter relationship and how in their family they showed their love through food. So there's tons of stuff in here about Korean food. I thought that was the best part of this book, and just amazing descriptions of the different kind of dishes that they would each make, and how they were the recipes were prepared for a certain events or holidays or days or whatever, and that was really excellent part of the book. So honestly, I just probably won't remember that much about this book. I mean, I hate to say that, but sometimes with these memoirs, especially when it's a young person's memoir, I just feel like we're getting a lot of these memoirs that are from sort of these young people who are maybe like early 30s, and they're processing things that happened to them when they were a child, through school and as a young adult, and they sort of all run together to me after a certain point. So yeah, that was in 5th place for me, but still a good book. In 4th place, you're not going to be surprised to find that it's Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford, another memoir. Ashley C. Ford is writing about what it was like to grow up Black in Indianapolis, or not Indianapolis, in Indiana, excuse me. She, again, had a troubled relationship with her mother. Her father was absent. He was in jail throughout much of her life, and she never knew why he was in jail. So anytime she tried to get the answers out of anybody in her family, the answers were not forthcoming. So she's, questioning what that's all about. And her mother and her had a violent relationship. So it wasn't even just that it was a difficult relationship. There was a lot of violence. There was, some stuff that happened in the family that was not great. So yeah, there's all the content warnings in this particular memoir. I thought that this memoir was even more well done than Crying in H Mart, in that the story flowed really well. There were time jumps, but they were well signposted, so you always knew where you were in her story, in her own particular story. So I felt like it was a very easy book to read. I was really engaged with it, and did not ever feel lost or wonder what the heck is she talking about. I wanted more about the dad's story. She doesn't find out why her dad was in jail until she's a teenager, and we don't ever really get the full story behind that. And that to me just made that just left this big question mark. And so I would have liked more. I would have liked more on that side of the story. And then in place 3, these, of course, are the books that I voted on to continue on to the final round. And in 3rd place is Chasing Me to My Grave by Winfred Rembert. I love this book. I had this book in the 1st round, I believe, and rated it really highly then as well. This is what Winfred Rembert's, he tells his story to another person, a historian, who writes it down for him. But he grew up in the Jim Crow South and was imprisoned on some trumped up charges. And so it's about his life and his childhood, and then his time in prison, and then he meets his wife, and how he takes the skill sets that he learned in prison and the love of his life, his wife, and turns that into his artistic career. He learned how to create art with leather, with the sort of tools that they had available in the prison. And it was, his art is just amazing. And that elevated this book to me, this autobiographical story that he told to somebody, and I have forgotten the name. There'll be a picture up here which will say who helped with writing this book. But it was just amazing to see how he was able to take this excellent relationship and finally feeling love in his life and the skill set that he had learned in prison, and turn that into this medium that he was able to tell his life story in. It was just amazing. The pictures of his art in this book are just fabulous. If you want to read this book, I would highly recommend that you get a physical copy, even if you get it from the library, just so you can flip through and look at the art. The art is just fabulous. And his story, of course, heartbreaking, awful, the things that he endures as a child and a young person, being in Jim Crow South and in the prison system in the time when the prisoners were used basically as slaves, legally, under the law. So yeah, just horrifying, but really well told, and the art just takes it to the next level. Again, I will link my video for the 1st round down below so that you can see me talk about that book in more detail. And then in 2nd place was a book I read for the first time in this round, and that is Little Devil in America by Hanif Abdur. I practiced this. I promise you I practiced this before I started this video. Abdurakib. I'm probably mispronouncing that again. Little Devil in America. This is an essay collection, and it just hit all the emotions for me. I mean, it hit all the emotions. I laughed, I cried, I was angered. It was beautiful. This book is all about Black performance in America. And so it goes from, you know, right after Civil War times to the present day, and talks about different ways Black people are expected to perform or choose to perform. And it's not just music, although that is certainly in here, but it's all different kinds of artistic performances. So I'll just talk about a few of the essays that I truly love. There was one in the beginning that was about dance competitions. Back in the early part of the 1900s, people would dance for hours and days in order to earn money, win these contests, these dance competitions where, you know, if you were the last one left standing, you would win a prize or you would win money. That was really interesting. He talks about funerals and the culture of performance at funerals in the Black community. And then at the end of that essay, there's an epilogue, which is basically an epilogue for Aretha Franklin. And it moved me to tears. It was so, so beautiful. I mean, read this book for nothing else but his epilogue to Aretha Franklin. It was gorgeous. And then there's a Magical Negro chapter, which talks about lots of different things that I found highly interesting, but the piece about Dave Chappelle and that whole controversy, fantastic. There's a whole section on Whitney Houston and how she couldn't dance. That was like mind-blowing to me. Did not know that. There was a whole section that talks about space and like connects the dance, the moonwalk, with Black astronauts and Octavia Butler. It was, I mean, the way he wove those topics together, just masterful. And then an essay about Josephine Baker, who was an entertainer and a spy in France. That was fantastic. The importance of the card game spades to the Black community. I used to play spades all the time, particularly when my husband and I were first married and he was in the military. And that was something that we would do with other military families, was play spades. So that was great for me. And then the final thing that I have to talk about is there's a section in here that talks about the singer Mary Clayton, who sang with the Rolling Stones on the song Gimme Shelter. You must go Google Mary Clayton singing Gimme Shelter with the Rolling Stones, because that woman killed that song. She was the star of that song. She had this amazing voice and the emotion that she brought to that song, and he breaks it all down for you in the essay. I mean, just outstanding, really outstanding. I just can't praise this book highly enough. It was so entertaining. It was so informative and just a really great read. I mean, I'm so thankful. I don't think I would have ever picked that book up had it not been for the Booktube Prize. And I'm so thankful I did. And so it made it to second place. And what do you say? You say, Heidi, how can it only be second place? You're praising this to the stars. Well, that's because the other book in my group was How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith. And I adore How the Word is Passed. I read it back in February during Black History Month, and 5-star read for me all the way. Clint Smith travels around the country visiting different historical sites and trying to find out how they deal with the legacy of slavery. So he visits Monticello, he visits plantations in the South, he visits a Confederate graveyard, he visits New York City, the site where the slave market was. He travels overseas to West Africa and visits, I don't know, I've forgotten the name of the place now off the top of my head. It's been a while since I read that book. The place where slaves were put on ships to come across the Atlantic to North America. And he talks about each one of these locations in context of how they discuss slavery. Do they? Don't they? If they do, are they being truthful? Are they being honest? Are they talking about it in like realistic ways, the way that it really was? Do they try to romanticize it? Do they just avoid the subject altogether and refuse to talk about it because it's too political? All things on the spectrum are discussed, because in each of these sites, each site deals with it in different ways. And it was fascinating. And he is a Black man, so he would actually go to these places and like take the tours and talk to the tour guides. And so he's experiencing these things as a Black man observing how they handle the question of slavery. And that made it even more poignant and emotionally hard hitting. I thought it was so excellently done. He's an amazing writer. He's so good at what he does. He's really excellent. He is a writer for The Atlantic. You know how much I love that magazine as well. I just think he is masterful at what he does. And I think How the Word Is Passed is probably the best nonfiction I've read this year so far. So yeah, it couldn't be anywhere other than in the first place. So that is my rankings for this round, the semifinals round. And so now we're on to the finals, and I am judging in the final round. So the 6 books that have made it through to the finals for the Booktube Prize in nonfiction: Empire Pain, Under a White Sky, Facing the Mountain, A Little Devil in America, How the Word Is Passed, and Chasing Me to My Grave. This is going to be extremely difficult. There is only one book that I have not yet read. That's Facing the Mountain. I have a request into my library. They didn't have it, so I had to do it in a library alone. But all of the rest of those books, I didn't rate any of them lower than a 4 when I read them for the first time. So it's going to be a tough one, but this is the way it should be. When you get to the final round of the Booktube Prize, you should have the absolute best books, and I think that this particular group is really, really strong. Before I leave, I would like to thank Robert for all his hard work in putting together the Booktube Prize. It's an amazing experience. I hope that if you have been thinking about joining us for judging, you will do so in 2023. And I also want to shout out these cool notebooks. I hope you can see the embossing on there. These are the official Booktube Prize notebooks. So they're just, I just got the lined notebook, but Robert has them also in dot grid, I think. So, and in different colors. And I just love, they're like a cloth bound journal, and they have this embossed, the logo of the Booktube Prize. And I have been, since I got my copy, I've been keeping my notes on each of the books that I read for the Booktube Prize, which helps me tremendously when I film this video at the end of the round, and also helps me when it's time for me to do my rankings. So just putting a plug out there. I think Robert has some more copies of these Booktube Prize notebooks. If that's something you're interested in, please give him a shout. Yeah, so that's it. Having a great time as usual. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the results of the final round of the Booktube Prize is going to be. So yeah, let's all stay tuned till October when we will announce our rankings for the final round. Hope you're all doing well. Talk to you soon.